What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. For today's episode, I got to chat with Julian of the New York band Common Sage. In early September, they released their sophomore record, It Lives and It Breathes, their first full-length in 3 years, and their first for No Sleep Records. We talked about the long journey the band took to get here, the joys of touring, how their songwriting process has simultaneously grown and remained the same, and more. Without further ado, here's my interview with Julian of Common Sage on the Ear Coffee Podcast. So just to get things started, why don't you introduce yourself, name, and you're kind of the primary person in Common Sage, but what are your roles as you would describe them in the band?
I'm Julian. Your roles in the band would be vocals, and at this point, I guess it's rhythm guitar. It's 2 guitars in the band as opposed to how it used to be, which was just 1. And I also write the lyrics, all the lyrics.
All right. So I like starting off interviews kind of in a similar way, because I find that just after talking to a lot of musicians over the years, I find that pretty much anybody that writes songs, plays music live, does all of the fun stuff that comes with being in a band, they've had a really strong connection, really close connection with music, just as a listener even, for a really long time. So I'm curious, what was your relationship with music as you were growing up, and maybe first kind of opening your mind and your eyes to the possibilities of what this art form and this creative outlet could be? If you have like any maybe favorite artists or bands that were that you had when you were growing up, and just kind of those first experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Phases, and I'm sure everyone has that. Phases of that. Blink-182 was a big thing, you know. I was in a band, like a worship Blink-182 band, basically. I wanted to be. It was probably more of like, what's the term for that, mall emo stuff? Like, I set my on fire and all that stuff.
Like that aughts stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I was really into that for a minute. And I mean, I can, like, Under Oath and all of those kinds of things, I still listen to all that stuff. But also, what probably made me start thinking more serious about music was summer I spent with these new friends, and they were playing clearly are like Blood Brothers, Cap'n Jazz, and like old Modest Mouse, which is what I think which is what I think Common Sage was trying to be up until recently, like old Modest Mouse. But yeah, that stuff left a big impact on me, and then everything that came with that, like Neutral Milk Hotel, or like Built to Spill, or all that kind of stuff.
I'm glad that you said that, because I'm glad that my ears were kind of hearing that correctly, especially with like the early stuff where the guitar work is very Modest Mousey, and I do mean that in a good way, at least.
Well,
kind of going back.
I don't know what I was thinking at this point, but yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So you mentioned just kind of like the Blink-182 like cover / worship band. But were there any other bands before Common Sage that maybe were a little bit more serious than just kind of like the teenage, like the high school bands that you're mostly doing just kind of for fun, just because you love playing music? Or was Common Sage like the first, I guess, more quote unquote legitimate band, for lack of a better term?
I think it's definitely probably the first legitimate one. Called David Crockett before this, and we were trying to be legitimate, but I mean, like, the bass player never played the same part point in time. The drummer wasn't really a drummer. Like, not really, just wasn't a drummer. And I was playing a guitar with the bridge was a little piece of wood, so it was just out of tune. I mean, like, at all times.
you're doing like some performance art or something, that might work. But if you're trying to like write songs,
it wasn't at the time, but retrospectively, we could all definitely call it performance art, I think. We were taking it kind of seriously. Like, we were playing in and out of state and stuff.
Okay.
But granted, that was like 2017 and earlier than that even. Like, that's what the first Common Sage record is, basically. It's just old Davy Crockett songs that like we were working on, or I was prominently working on, and we broke up and I just wanted to record them. So that's what that album was. I mean, that album came out in 2018, but those songs were written in like 2015 and 16, you know?
Okay. Yeah, I guess kind of wrapping into that, how did Common Sage, I guess, kind of formulate even in your mind, or just were Phil and Jenna, who I believe played on the first record and the EP, were those two friends of yours also in Davy Crockett? Just kind of talk about how Common Sage first more officially formulated around the time of that first record.
I've said this so many. I've told this story in so many different iterations. It was just I knew them through like living in Staten Island, through music. I guess because of Davy Crockett. They weren't in Davy Crockett. I met them. I met Jenna. I knew Phil's sister my whole life, and then one day we got like friendlier. And one day, after Davy Crockett was not a thing, Jenna was interested in playing music with me. Yeah, I kind of want to just record these songs just to like have them in the world instead of, you know, in my head. Well, one day also, after we played a show with him or something, I saw him at a party, and he was together, so he was down to do this together. So it was just supposed to be this one album, record this album, and then probably a year later we were all just like, let's like play shows. After figuring that out for a long time, we just started playing shows, and then kind
of went from there.
That like dissipated too. So like Jenna left to Common Sage maybe 2 years ago at this point, and Phil has moved to California.
So just kind of staying on the first album for a second. What was it like going back and kind of revisiting those songs you've been working on, or even just playing for, sounds like up to 3 years at that point, just for the sake of putting them together for a record? And did that kind of affect how you envision the record, since they were songs written at so many different times, it sounds like? Just kind of share a little bit about that headspace you were in when you were recording the record, and kind of just first thing, like, no, we're going to put these songs together and put a title and release it and do all the things that come with that.
I don't particularly remember specifics.
That's fair. Yeah.
I do remember, because it was with like two friends that I like love and respect, and, you know, like infinitely better than what I was working with before that. So at the time, just 10 times better than anything I would have imagined now. But at the time, like, super into it. It's going to be like, I thought they were great songs. I thought they came out really great. I don't think either of those things anymore, but that's not, that's just like, you know, that's the songwriting. Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of how the passage of time goes and looking back.
Yeah, exactly. Also, like, recording is like, you know, dated and whatever, but that was a long time ago.
Since you've mostly just kind of moved past that first record, but if you were to just listen to it today or right now, what's something that you still appreciate about it, even if it's just something like you know you've been able to do better on the new album or even on the EP from last year? Just what's something that you think like, you know, this is something I can still maybe not enjoy, but at least appreciate.
I think the composition renditions of the songs are like cool still. Like the most I've ever, I think, dived into. Like there are songs that I feel like have like 10 parts or something. That's probably exaggerated. But I mean, it's more than like, they're definitely not like verse, chorus, bridge, choruses,
Absolutely,
you know?
yeah.
I'm less into that at this point in my life. Like I'm more into the verse chorus thing
Mm-hmm.
with like, slight variations here and there. But like I can appreciate what I was going for and like, well, they're pulled off to an extent. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think they're commendable, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't remember the last time I listened to it. It was a long time ago, but I do remember whenever that was, I was like, wow, I'm like riffing pretty hard right now. Like, I don't think I can more.
Yeah.
Even if I am like trying to like embody Isaac Brock from Modest.
Yeah, especially with just kind of like the song length, which I know you've pulled off some longer songs on more recent releases, but there's a lot more just kind of songs that like hit that like 6-7 minute mark and just kind of really go for it compositionally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So after putting that album out, just there's a lot of playing shows, maybe like smaller tours. I don't know if you had any bigger tours, but it seems like during those shows and during those little tours, you met some people that would end up either joining the band in the case of Chris of Stay Inside, or just that you would collaborate with a few others, whether it's just like some production or recording. But just talk a little bit about kind of the experience of playing those shows, meeting a lot of really cool bands. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I just went through like the Facebook events and just kind of scrolled. I'm like, oh, I know like half these bands. That's really cool. Just working with and playing with some really talented people, and also just kind of how Common Sage was functioning at that time, just kind of before it started to undergo some like lineup changes, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, we got, in my opinion, like lucky, like 75% of the time. People, maniac, or I used to be at least. I used to hound people for shows when shows were still a thing, and I mean, I would really not let up. Even so, like people were just like really nice and kind and like had us on their bills a lot. And yeah, I love playing shows. I think it's awesome. I want to throw up. I really like it. And yeah, I mean, playing all those Common Sage shows for all that time, like literally goes to show you just like how many friends playing those shows. I mean, and like you said, I became friends with Stay Inside, who I liked before I ever played a show with them. I became friends with, I mean, a bunch of local Brooklyn I was aware of, and, you know, super happy to, I mean, meet, but also like become friendly with.
Yeah.
Whoever, like I became friends with, one of my closest friends is Chris from Carpool from Rochester. Like, I love like No Thank You from Philadelphia. Evan through that, who's the bassist in No Thank You, and now he's one of the guitarists in Slow Mass, which is one of my favorite bands right now.
Right,
like,
yeah.
And really lucky to like even get to meet people like that, you know?
While you were kind of just focusing on shows and just trying to kind of just get yourself out there, which is the rise and grind of being in a band, were you still trying to write, or was it just kind of in bits and pieces? Because I know that with the EP that you released last year, it was written and recorded over the course of about 2 years. But like, were shows kind of just the primary focus, and then writing was secondary, or how did you sort of balance that, just as someone who has to play a gig, but also as someone who likes to write music, or at least wants to write music in some regard over the years?
Right. Yeah. I mean, shows were definitely like the primary goal. Like, that's what we were doing. That's what we were practicing for every week. Probably I think that's definitely one of the reasons why Jenna ended up leaving, because she was tired of playing like these same songs for 2 years, which
Mhm.
I mean, I totally understand. And yeah, I was writing like bits and pieces here and there. And whenever we tried to flesh them out, like, I don't know, it just like out super well for some reason. I don't particularly know why. Maybe like everybody was tired of playing the shows. Uh, Maybe I didn't really come in with a full idea, and I don't particularly like writing on the spot.
Mhm.
Thing up with the band, I like to like make something and then hyper focus on it for like a month and like tear it apart and hate it and love it and hate it again. You know,
Mhm.
like that's just how it works. And we just had these little bits and pieces that never came to anything. We were playing too many shows for people, and then Jenna ended up leaving. But when Jenna left, it kind of like left Phil and I with nothing else to do than focus on those songs. So, not to say that like, oh, good thing Jenna left,
Yeah,
because,
no.
but if she didn't leave, like, I don't think we would have the new album that we have. You
Mhm.
know, like I don't think,
Like an
yeah,
incidental catalyst, sort of.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so with the EP, might as well eat the chicken. We won't be here in the morning. Love the lengthy titles of the first two releases. Came out
Thank you.
last August.
Right.
About 2 years after the first album.
Mhm.
When you finally did get to, I guess, putting together those songs, finalizing at least the arrangements that you would record, what was the process kind of drawing those bits and pieces you've been putting together over the past 2 years and just recording with a handful of different people, including Chris, and some other friends? Just talk a little bit about that. And yeah.
It's really similar to the first album. It took 2 years to come out, but we had Wraparound, Background, and Saw Daddy made already. Like they
Okay.
were songs in our set list already. Just took us, I don't know when, it didn't take us 2 years to record it. We had those songs recorded way well before that EP came out. With them, one of them was supposed to go on a comp. Actually, they were both supposed to go on two different comps that neither of them worked out.
That tends to happen with comps.
Yeah. It's a classic. But I do with them. And then you know, Jenna left, Phil left for California because coronavirus hit, and then I was bored for a few weeks, and I was like, let's put these songs out. So I wrote the last song, Wet Grass, like relatively quickly, and that's why it's acoustic, because there was no full band for it.
Yeah.
You know. And I just went to Philadelphia one day and I recorded with just talking about, and we did the interludes. So it all sounded hopefully cohesive. And then we put the EP out.
Yeah. When did the idea of the three interludes come together? Were those little just pieces that you'd already kind of hoped to use for like an interlude, whether on an EP or an album, or was that something you also kind of wrote around the same time as Wet Grass when you were like, I have nothing to do, let's work on some songs?
I can't exactly remember. Honestly, I think parts of one of those interludes I had already.
Okay.
And I was like, I have nothing to do with this. I don't want to like I don't want to make something out of this. And I mean, it's only 3 songs. So I was like, it can't just be 3 songs. That's so dumb. I love when people like do things like that, like just put something, ties all the songs together,
Yeah.
you know, connects them. So that was my idea. I think I had this one little part written, and then I just made variations on
from
it.
there. So just kind of with more thematically, I guess, with the EP, not as much reading into like the lyrics or anything, but just even from the title, and then there's the little note on Bandcamp just saying that there's no meaning here. It's like, damn, okay. And then you hit play. I'm curious, that just felt like a little kind of like deliberately nihilistic almost. Am I misinterpreting that, or I guess just where was your head at when you were kind of putting those non-musical final touches on, and just was that something you felt about the EP and just kind of how it was resonating with you? Just share a little bit about that if you want.
Yeah, I love to think about it, honestly. I don't know. That must have been. I thought it was probably funny. It is kind. I still think it's funny. I forgot that I wrote that until you just said that. I love little stupid cryptic messages on things. I guess I was thinking, probably still think this. The title is like sounds like Nothing Lasts to me, like that of it, I guess. And that's not why I chose the title, but I thought that it was funny retrospectively. You know, like 3 songs like that are completely unrelated. The band had fallen apart essentially. That's being together just by some guitar notes because they're all kind of similar. Like it's kind of I guess I thought to myself, oh, this is kind of connected. This all kind of could create a message, but also
they're just very different songs written at very different points. Don't read into it, people.
I mean, that is something. I mean, that is a theme of sorts, but it wasn't intended or anything.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure if this is like the leaning into like the emo side of things, where you're like nothing matters, or if it was like a little bit more tongue in cheek, which sounds like is closer to the truth. Which is
I would hope it's more.
Yeah. I wanted to clarify, but it's like okay, that's both could be good, but I'm glad it was the latter. All right. Jumping ahead a little bit to the record you just released at the beginning of this month. It's the very end of the month now. It Lives and Breathes, put out with No Sleep. So how did you kind of, I guess, rope Chris into joining the band, and maybe who are the other contributors, members of the band who either recorded on the album or just are part of the band now? How did you rally in that group of collaborators for this new record?
It's just me, Phil, and Chris.
Okay.
Record. Like I said before, Phil and I were working on those songs a bit more and taking them a bit more seriously after Jenna left. So a lot of those songs had ends, but then he went to California. It took a while, like maybe 6 months at least or something, but we were talking a lot and I was working on them more on my own. And then I wanted somebody to play bass. I didn't want to like worry about it necessarily. So it started off where I just asked Chris if he would play bass, and he was like, yeah, because I mean, nobody was doing anything during quarantine, especially. It started off with him just playing bass, and then I think one day I was just like, oh, like if you have like a guitar idea, like if you have any extra guitar ideas, like then it just turned into him mainly focusing on, well, he was focusing on both, but he came up with, he's the lead guitarist.
Okay.
Album. And which, I mean, I think the album would be nothing without that stuff. Like it wouldn't be what it was. So just started working on all the songs a lot and like structures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then that's kind of, and then I went out to California for a week and Phil and I worked on it for a week straight every day. And then I came back and I think for like a day or two, and then we all went to Chicago to record it.
Yeah. So just kind of spending, maybe, I don't know if it was different this time around, since with each of these respective releases, you've had a good amount of time and spent a good amount of time working on and fleshing out and tinkering with these songs. But with the specific songs on the album, what was kind of the timeline for those? How did they grow as you worked on them, as both Chris and Phil added their respective parts, and just kind of, since it sounds like, at least for the initial ideas for a song, you just kind of as an individual dive in and just really take your time with it before it is brought to the other band members. But yeah, I'd love to just hear a little bit about that process and how the songs grew, especially with Chris adding lead guitar parts and adding a lot as just the new member of the band, if you will, and then kind of writing it in spurts when you're able to spend time with Phil or Chris, and just that multi-year process, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, it was maybe 5 out of the 10 songs, 5 of them were made with just Phil and I.
Okay.
Little baby versions compared to what they are now. Slightly different structures. And then, yeah, I started going to Chris's place once a week or a few times a week, and he has really fucking good ideas. I don't know, like, he was into the songs as they were, but he had, like, always just a little melody when he listened to it that he would just hum that sounded cool, or just change the way the song sounded. So something he played for, like, a verse on Sour, it changed the way I thought about the chorus on it.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up changing, like, a chorus here and there, or we tacked on a part to a song here or there. And I don't know, yeah, he's truly to thank for, I think it sounds than everything else. Like, it's like more adult in my opinion than the other songs, and I think that's like strongly because of him in a lot of ways. And so then I just went to Phil with all these changes we had and wrote accordingly, and
Yeah.
he always wanted to push himself in his drumming and stuff, and I think these songs a bigger chance, a greater chance
provided that opportunity. Yeah.
And yeah.
So I read this in, like, I don't know if it's like the part of the press release, but it was in like just one of the articles that was written about the song, just a little bit of background. I don't know if it was just new songs or just added a lot of stuff, but a lot of stuff it sounded like changed or was added when you actually went to record in Chicago with Neil from Slow Mass. So before we even kind of get into the experience of recording itself, because it sounds like that was a bit of an adventure, how did it feel, and just like, how did the process of adding or creating newer songs and just adding things to pre-existing songs, what was that experience like just during that 6-day window and just kind of like that time crunch, which is kind of contrary to how you and the band have written prior for almost everything else.
Right. Yeah, it was stressful. I feel like we didn't add, like, just made things more concrete.
Okay.
So me and Chris were working on things October. I want to say me and Chris only wrote together for like maybe 2 months before that, and that's with a lot of gaps in between each week. So, like, a ton of stuff, but we also had a ton of stuff that we didn't have written. Like, I clearly remember he came up with what he played on the last song, Sheol, Airbnb we were staying at the day before we went in to record the first day. He came up with that the day before. He came up with on Fall Down, I think, the day of. What else? We came up with a lot of lead guitar parts for Book Burning the day of. It was just a lot of day of or day before.
Yeah.
But it was things like, like little guitar
Okay,
or maybe
more like
like
kind of embellishments instead
yeah,
of like whole restructurings of songs.
right,
Right? Okay, okay,
nothing like that, but still all the same stressful, and stressful is a good word. I would have. I think if we had I think if we had a little bit more time to come up with those things beforehand, made a big difference. Like not a big difference, but a, a strong difference.
yeah,
And I love the way the album came out. But yeah, just
yeah,
for anything, if you just had something more planned out. But also, it's really nice, and it can be uh, beautiful when things
and
are spur of the moment
yeah,
too. You know.
um, yeah. Just I'll talk a little bit about the recording process and getting connected with Neil from Slow Mass. Was that kind of connection? You mentioned working with Evan before from, I believe, No Thank You, and is now with Slow Mass. Is that kind of how you got connected with Neil? And yeah, just love to hear a little bit about that stressful yet fruitful 6-day ordeal.
Uh, yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
I was doing the album with Evan. I don't know how, but just one day Neil got brought into the conversation with Evan, and Evan was like, "Oh, I'm friends with him. I can get you into contact with him." And I was like, "Sure, yeah." And I still wasn't sure who to go with. Phil seemed to uh, want to do it with somebody different,
hmm
new person. He thought it would be good for us. And like I said before, I love Slow Mass. I thought their recording sounded really awesome. So I was also into it. And so then we just went from there. Evan got me into contact with Neil. We set it up for October. And then yeah, I went out, like I said. I keep saying like I went out to California to see Phil for a week. We practiced. He came to New York like the following week, and we practiced for 2 or 3 days just to solidify what we were going to do. And then Phil and I drove out to Chicago to record, and then Chris flew out the next day because he wasn't able to come with us for some reason.
hmm
So he flew out with us the next day, and then 6 days straight after that, and it was awesome, and it was like professional and well, like super smoothly. The only stupid hiccups were the things we didn't have uh, written down, but it
yeah.
was awesome. It was really awesome. And be with a bunch of cats outside.
Nice.
It was awesome.
Cool. Um, yeah. So kind of continuing with like, I guess there's the recording aspect, but then you have to worry about releasing the album. How did you get connected with No Sleep, and just talk a little bit about the process of working with them, because they're a, let's put it lightly, fairly well known label, and that's a pretty cool honor to get looped in with them. Kind of after just handling a lot of things yourself and internally for the past like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. All because of Chris. Chris Stay Inside was on No Sleep.
Right.
They got signed last year. Chris just messaged them and was like, "Hey, this is my new band. If you want this, it's yours." Like the album, and they were into it, thankfully.
Hell yeah.
And then yeah, since then it's been really, and they're pressing vinyl. It's my first vinyl.
Yeah.
Been dreaming of a vinyl since I was like 15,
Yeah.
like, well, it's cool to be on a cool roster. It's cool to be on a label that's put out like some of my favorite music in the world. It's cool. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
Hell yeah. Looking back at the album as a whole, now that, I mean, it's been done for, sounds like probably at least a little while. Excuse me.
Yeah.
But at least being able to look back at it a month after release, what are some of your, if maybe not one because it's impossible to pick, but some of your favorite or proudest moments on the album, just as a musician, as a songwriter, or just as someone who appreciates and loves what your bandmates and friends add to the music. And also, what was one of the biggest challenges during writing and recording and everything leading up to the album being finalized? Just kind of two sides of the coin, like a high point and I don't even want to say a low point, but a challenge that you hopefully were able to overcome.
I'm super proud of the whole thing. Like, still.
Okay, that's a cop out. Come on. No.
I'm like, it's that thing that happens every time where, I mean, you're proud of it in the moment, you get it out there, and then you're like, oh, I can do better. So I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, I can do better, and I want to do better. But I mean, I'm really proud of it. I think there are obviously things you can improve on. Yeah, but like, I think it's just like a really solid release, and it's the best thing I've ever done. Like, I think the theme of the album, at least to me, is, I mean, which I always push for. I want to have a theme going. I want there to be like cohesiveness to it, you know? So, I mean, I think all the songs meld well together. I think everything makes sense. I just think the sound and the tone, and I'm really proud of just like the tone of the album, and I'm proud of all the songs, and I'm proud of, I'm really proud of it. I'm sure I'll like absolutely hate it.
That period of just being disenchanted, and then you'll come full circle like a year after that.
Right. Absolutely. But at this given time, I'm proud of it. And I'm also like just really happy with all the feedback and all the reception it's gotten, you know, like, yeah. We've gotten like so many new fans from this, like, genuinely, and that's like cool. Like, I could never truly like say, oh, I have all these fans now, and like, I don't think I have like all these fans now, but yeah,
being able to say like fans is kind of like a cool feeling, if not maybe a bit weird for any musician.
Yeah, and it's just really cool.
Hell yeah.
As for high and low points, always had a hard time with writing lyrics. In particular, I was in a weird place in my life, so writing lyrics was really hard because I wanted to get out exactly what I was thinking in a not corny way, and in like, you know, like an understandable way, and also a way that felt good to me to like express.
Felt true to the emotions you were feeling and kind of what was going on.
Exactly. But also it's really difficult. Like, sometimes I thought it was like too corny, or just some things didn't make sense. I mean, like, yeah, to this day, like, I'm writing new lyrics now, and it's just a headache. Like, I just write a line, I erase the line, you know, I just can never write exactly what I want to write. I have trouble with. But that was hard. During recording, singing vocals were really hard because I feel like I'm pushing it as far as I could.
Yes.
And on this album, more so than like ever before. Yeah, so I was just like, my voice the last day of recording, thankfully, but I like completely lost my voice, and that was really difficult. As far as recording goes, yeah, that's probably the most difficult thing.
Yeah, that's
and also hearing yourself back is also always weird. So even when it is good, it's never good. So I have to like really take a step back and like ask everyone in the room and be like, is this good? And they're like, yes. And then I'm like, great, you know.
Cool. I'm not delusional.
I mean, I am delusional, but great.
Less delusional than maybe where it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You need to be like a little kind of disenchanted at some point just to kind of make sure you have the best stuff.
I need to do it and then walk away from it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's true for, I don't want to say most, but a lot of musicians. Cool. Yeah. So, the album is available via No Sleep. It's on all streaming. You can get the vinyl. Are there any other physical releases, or is it just vinyl for now?
Right now, just vinyl through No Sleep.
Just vinyl, still really cool to say, but
yeah, absolutely. But I I don't know when this released to the world, but tapes are going to be made with a variant, a different art, a different cover to it. So that'll come out.
Obviously, you have the tape now. You've started writing lyrics for the new stuff, but what is kind of the future for Common Sage looking at right now? It's still pretty close to the album's release, so hopefully you've been able to take a deep breath and rest and recover just from all the stressors of putting out a record, at least for a little bit. But yeah, what else are you kind of working on? Do you and the rest of the band have planned for maybe not the immediate future, but just what are you going for?
Yeah. Phil, during last winter, I went back out to California for like 3 months because I got fired or furloughed again because of coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
So, planning to do. So, California and Phil and I wrote almost an entire new album while we were there.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy. I never would have thought that something like that would happen. But that's still like super skeletal. Like they're just demos of just guitar and drums, Phil and I. So I was working on that pretty chaotically for a while, like focusing on lyrics and stuff. Burnt myself out on that really harshly. So I just like shelved it for a second. I haven't come back to that in a while, but since then, more new songs, because, you know, makes complete sense to me. So there's, I think what the plan is there's going to be a new EP in the near future, hopefully, and then another LP, which is those older songs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of doing it backwards. Very nice.
Yeah, backwards. I think what's tonight, the EP, the songs that I've been doing now are heavier than normal, like more in line with like and an earthquake on the new album.
Okay, yeah.
So I think it's been like fun and nice to just like entirely on something different than what I was, you know, like faster, shorter songs, you know.
Mm-hmm. Kind of just satisfy that other side of your creative needs. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, like I never get out those angry feelings, you know. So I think this will be like a concentration on that.
This will be the Catharsis EP coming up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Cool. That wraps it up for pretty much most of my legit questions. But since most of the time I spend chatting with Minnesota bands, and now I'm getting the rare and great opportunity to chat with someone who is not from the Great White North. I love having people just recommend just kind of their favorite, like local to you or just underground bands. I know you've already kind of mentioned Stand Side, but like if Chris or Phil have any other projects they're working on, just shouting out some of your friends or just favorite bands you've been digging lately, especially that are East Coast concentrated, just so all of us in the Midwest can get some cool new bands to check out.
For sure. I have so many. I'm gonna go off, honestly.
Do it.
Friends, local band, really awesome. No Thank You released a new album. I think it was last year at this point.
It was last year, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome band, awesome album. Carpool is a fucking amazing band. They should be on tour with like Prince Daddy at this point, but for some reason they're not.
I mean, they're still going on a pretty sick tour soon. We'll let them have that.
Absolutely. My friend Doug is in there gutting a body of water out in Philadelphia. That whole little scene's like really cool right now. Like Bleary Eyed's an awesome band. Full Body 2 is an awesome band. Steve is gonna, I think, release new music soon.
The band name is Steve, or is that a person?
Yeah, the band name.
Just clarifying.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm blanking. That's all I've got right now.
No worries. That's already a good handful. And people always feel like, oh, someone's going to feel left out, but I don't think that's ever really the case. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And thank you for taking some time to chat. It's great to meet you, Julian. Congrats on the new album. Like we said before, it's available everywhere. Check it out. Get the vinyl if you like it. Stay tuned for tapes and new music, I suppose I should say. Cool.
Nice to meet you also. Thank you for having me.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.